Hello, Rashpal, and welcome to DNV's Spotlight on Shipping series. As many of you will know, my guest today is Mr. Rashpal Bhatti, Vice President, Maritime and Supply Chain Excellence with BHP. And the point of today's conversation is to shed light on some of the most important topics influencing the shipping industry's decarbonization agenda, and to learn a bit more about BHP's own decarbonization journey. So, Rashpal, why don't we just get started, and welcome to this small conversation.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Knut.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So, as one of the largest bulk charterers, BHP's efforts towards decarbonization carry a lot of weight. And recently, BHP made a bold commitment to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And naturally, the question is, how do you plan to achieve this? And what are the first steps you want to take, please?
Thanks very much, Knut. So first of all, we feel that as one of the largest bulk charterers in the world, we need to do this. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for society. It's the right thing to do for the industry. It's the right thing to do for the people who come after us. So three parts to this. The first is data democratization. First, we must use that as a significant lever. So for us, Knut, it's been very important to make sure that we are able to use the data that we have from vessels, the technology that we have invested in, to understand what our life cycle, emissions life cycle looks like for all of our vessels, 120 vessels that we have on the water at any time. And you'll be aware that Veracity is our chosen solution for that, which is something that we're very proud of. That tells us exactly where we stand. You know, as you say, what you can't measure, you can't do anything about. And so that's the first port of call, pardon the pun, for us, and that's working really well. The second point is that chartering choices are very important for us. So the here and now gets us to 15–20% abatement by making really smart chartering choices. Now, that doesn't just mean the type of vessel and the fuel efficiency on that vessel. It means working with the technical managers on the routes that are taken, the speed that is used, but also getting the hull painted, getting the vessel cleaned up, the underwater sludges and everything else taken away, getting the propeller to be the way we want it to work. And with that, we're finding that we're seeing much more significant levels of abatement than we thought. Then the next point is the innovation that we can, again, this is here and now. This is not about 2050. This is today. And the innovation that we think we can bring to the industry. LNG, as you said, is something that we feel very strongly about. That's a solution here today. And we can't walk past good in the pursuit of perfection. And the LNG solution for us was important because it gives us 30% abatement, not in 5 years, not in 2050, today. And as you know, we've taken delivery of the first dual fuel 208,000 ton vessel very recently, the Mount Tourmaline. Then there's this part, which is what is the net zero fuel going to be? And my view on that is that happens simultaneously with the work that I've just described, the three other steps that I've just described. Not before that and not after that, but simultaneously. And we are taking some, what I would say, some very positive steps around that. So first of all, we are the founding members of the GCMP, the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization, which Professor Lin Lu is heading. And we are very optimistic around that work, which is associated with green ammonia and bunkering of green ammonia associated with the safety. We're working with a number of other organizations around the world on the technical element of green ammonia. And we're working with another consortium on the supply of green ammonia. At the same time, we know we're going from homogeneous fuel to heterogeneous fuel. We don't know what that silver bullet looks like today. So we've got to make sure that we keep our options open. Bio-LNG is another one that we feel quite strongly about. Perhaps biodiesel will play a role between now and the end of the decade, and we're working very heavily on all three of those as possible outcomes. We're obviously mindful that methanol, green methanol, is something that Maersk have taken a view on, and we're watching that. But we feel that that could be quite an extensive European and perhaps North American solution, and less so in Asia, where our footprint is very large.
If you take a further look at the value chain, how does this strategy play out in BHP's different commodity segments?
Knut, we often talk about this, and we feel very strongly that BHP has a significant set of future-facing commodities, not least copper, nickel, recently announced potash, and of course iron ore, and others will continue to be crucial for steel and development in infrastructure. But people sometimes forget quite quickly that the amount of steel required for those renewable parts of the industry that require steel, whether that's wind power or solar panels, is significant, and the steel intensity for those is very large. So we see iron ore as a future-facing commodity, perhaps not for traditional uses as we've seen as much in the past, but for renewables. And as we think about that, those customers that we sell to and are part of our ecosystem, the demand is there from their customers, from their stakeholders, from our stakeholders around us, to say that we need to be delivering a better, greener product. And we are absolutely aligned with that. The great thing is that this stride in taking abatement, in taking carbon abatement further, complements so well our set of commodities.
If you look now at how various stakeholders like financiers, charterers, and even cargo owners are taking a more active role in pushing for faster progress on emission reduction, is shipping's balance of power shifting away from our global regulator, the IMO? And if so, where does that leave the IMO?
Shifting, not, no. Spreading, yes. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I think that the responsibility set around what needs to be done to deliver very positive outcomes for industry, monetary or economic outcomes, safety outcomes, as well as decarbonization outcomes, that responsibility set and that intersection is being understood by many more players and actors in the supply chain than it ever was in the past. It's not the IMO's problem only, if I may say that. Or it's not the vessel owners or the charterers or the financiers or the shipyards. It's an ecosystem approach. And that's why I say spreading. And I firmly believe that. Within that, of course, then there's the next level of that is, then you've got to understand within that ecosystem, if that responsibility has spread, then within that, what role do you have to play? And the role you play in that is associated with volume, scale, positioning, leadership. But if you have the right intent, which is to be able to share in that value system, in that ecosystem, then I think we're heading to the right place. If there are players or actors who feel that value cannot be shared and it's got to be a win-lose situation, then we will not get there. But my experience in the maritime industry in the last 5 or 6 years is that we've moved along that journey at speed. And it's really great to see how the industry is coming together. I still don't think fast enough. I think there are a number of players that can move faster. I also believe that the IMO has a role to play that is a multifaceted role that will be able to move the game forward very quickly. And I feel quite strongly that the 2023 approach we're all watching that, and I'm optimistic. That's probably because of my nature, that we will see something of a step change that will drive the position forward.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think the IMO will come with a lot more momentum when things are moving into 23 and beyond, as you say. Great stuff, Rashpal. If you remember back to Glasgow and COP26 in November last year, one of the many discussions we had there was the concern for shipping and how to tackle the challenges of these emerging safety risks with the new fuels that we talk about, but also around crew competence and the need to, say, upskill the crews and the seafarers on this decarbonization journey. How is BHP working to address these challenges, please?
Yes, absolutely. And first of all, I think this is a great place to first of all say to all the seafarers who may be listening, our deepest gratitude to all of you for the work that you do, being away from your families and at sea for months on end. Without you, we don't have anything on the shelves in the supermarkets. Without you, we don't move our raw materials. Without you, steel doesn't get made. Without you, renewables don't happen. So we're very thankful to all of you out there to do that. In the same vein, it is in everybody's interests, seafarers, vessel owners, charterers, that seafarers are upskilled. And at COP26, I think that came through quite strongly. Now, I think shipping is perhaps the hardest to abate sector, but therein lies the challenge. And I think that the training and upskilling of seafarers, as we've seen with our LNG dual fuel vessels, is absolutely possible. But also, there is a big pull from seafarers, from technical managers, from ship managers. They want to see this because they know that this is the future. And if you get ahead of that and allow people the space to absorb because they have the learning agility, and we know that they do, then it's something that we support and we've seen that is great for the vessel owner, it's great for the seafarer, and the investment is only going to pay rich dividends for us in the coming years.
Thank you, Rashpal. I just want to echo your appreciation for the seafarers and the job that they're doing. It's just, incredible how they have managed throughout the pandemic and now also going forward. I'm sure they will manage well, but we certainly need to back them up.
We do.
Coming maybe to my last question then, Rashpal. So we talk about attracting talent to shipping and how essential that will be for the industry to stay responsive to the challenges. And you talked about innovation. And how can shipping be made a more attractive industry within which to work when set against the backdrop of the crew crisis and being a hard to abate sector, as you just mentioned? And how does a growing emphasis on the green credentials factor into this? I know it's a little bit of a big question, but maybe you have a response to this, Rashpal.
It is a big question, and one that we challenge ourselves with quite a bit. It's not a conclusion we've come to, but we're fast getting to the point where this convergence of thought is that the opportunity for us in the shipping sector to attract talent that will help us get to where we need to is massive. We are very attractive. So I don't agree with people who say that shipping is not attractive anymore for the millennials or for people who are coming out of university now. I think quite the opposite. I think the scholars of today and the academics of today are looking for that big challenge of where they will make a difference. And shipping is one of those key areas, hard to abate. Engineering, chemical engineering, commercial, decarbonization, environmental challenges that people want to take on.
Very good, Rashpal. Thank you so much. And I know it's a little bit unfair here. I've been asking you a number of questions, but I'm not sure. Maybe you have a question for me towards the end.
The question for you would be, if you, the vantage point that you have, CEO of DNV, and if I look at this from a life cycle analysis point of view of voyages, both from a classification society perspective, but perhaps more importantly from as an innovation leader as you are, how do you deal with this what I would call frustration, perhaps, that you know you have the tools to allow people to assess their life cycle of emissions and do something about it, but yet we're not seeing this being pervasive across the industry?
That's a great question, Rashpal. Yes, I think we are actually ahead of the game when it comes to tools and how we can influence this. And as you have pointed to also in your responses, some people are and some companies are driven by the purpose, their value, their sense of responsibility to contribute. Whilst others are more, say, on the compliance end of the scale, and they are sort of waiting until things get, either regulated through the IMO or become sort of a massive force from commercial, perspectives. So I think this is, the balancing point. And right now, it is basically the leaders of the industry that are taking these tools into place. And we have, for instance, the emission insights, which gives you the opportunity to have a dashboard giving you the emissions that you are committing, and you can have a very nice trajectory of your performance, and you can measure that against not only the regulations that will come into force on the CII, but also on the Poseidon principles and other measures and trajectories that will be there. So I think the uptake is going to scale quite a lot after 2023, and then naturally this will, in a few years' time, I think this will be, everyone will do this, and they will think back and say that, how come we didn't do this earlier? And with the ESG revolution, I think there are so many drivers that are pushing everyone in this direction. But we have the tools, as you say, it is possible. And I think the demand is growing tremendously as we speak. So hopefully we can really, show and demonstrate that we are not just talking green, we are actually improving performance day by day and year by year. I think that is important.